Hello and welcome to the Salmon's Pizzeria, serving you your slice of Scottish football. I'm your host today, Ethan Hampton of the Dens Park Choir and commentator for DTV. And this Premiership Roundup podcast, I am joined by Motherwell fan Jenna Thompson and St Mirren TV commentator and part of Misery Hunters, Sam Smith. Guys, how are we doing today?
Absolutely superb.
Aye, all good. Very well prepared for this. As I said, watched the highlights a bit. I never go all the games. So.
I think it's been a good weekend for most of us because we've got plenty to chat about. Lots of drama in the top flight this weekend. Jenna, your beloved Motherwell, obviously recording an historic result at Ibrox. Sam's dear Motherwell suffered a home defeat to Celtic. Both results taking us a step closer to the inevitable conclusion of the Premiership season. I'm not going to call it a title race because that just feels too generous at this point. But, we're not sports scene, so we're not going to start off with any of that. We're going to go into a race that actually kind of matters. Starting off, the race for third place. Probably the most significant game of the weekend is Hibs 2, Hearts 1, the Edinburgh Derby. I didn't actually catch the full game. I've only caught the highlights and a little bit of reading up on, of course, what this all means. Did you guys get a chance to watch the game?
Aye, watched the full game. It was good, a good advert for Scottish football. Really entertaining, pretty end to end. Both teams had a lot of chances, but I think obviously with the result, I think just kind of in terms of going for third, the momentum really looks as if it's going to sit with Hibs going forward. I think 15 games now unbeaten. I think in terms of like how impressive that is, I'd say considering the context how they started the season, for me probably more impressive than Aberdeen's start to the season. I think everyone. I remember coming away for watching us win Easter Road around October time. I think for a lot of people, a lot of Hibs fans, it was probably the kind of straw that broke the camel's back. A lot of them did want David Gray out after that, but the turnaround since then has been tremendous. A few of the players will be in the running to get in the team of the year. Guys like Mickey Cadden have been kind of talismanic. They've really stepped it up over the last wee bit, but it was a really, really entertaining game, and I thought Hibs thoroughly deserved the win, to be honest.
And what about yourself, Jenna?
With the Hibs, I watched all of it. The goals were absolutely phenomenal. That's the type of stuff you want to see on likes of Sky Sports because it makes our game look so attractive. I still can't stop playing with that Hearts goal because if we start scoring goals like that, I'm never going to leave Motherwell ever again.
Well, yeah, Hibs obviously take advantage in this race for third place. I believe that's 9 points out of 9 games. 9 points out of 9 games. 9 possible points that they could have acquired in the last 3 games, beating Celtic, beating Hearts, and they also won away to Dundee United at Tannadice as well. So, a massive run of form, great results, especially with the one with Celtic, because often we say how that's a free hit, so that's an unexpected 3 points in this race, and they currently sit third place. And you look at the fixtures, and you got to say, you've got to favour them, I think, staying third going into the split. But on the game itself, obviously things kick off with Martin Boyle scoring the first goal of the game, and a generational celebration that could have aged very poorly because minutes later, George Grant pings one in the top corner. But maybe just starting with Boyle's goal before we go all over the place. It's just vintage Martin Boyle, isn't it? Even in his 30s, he still has that blistering pace.
Aye, I looked a wee bit poor though, probably from my Hearts perspective for Taylor. Maybe to get beat for pace there. I think he could have maybe done a wee bit more to try and get the body in front of Boyle. But as you said, Ethan, he's lightning quick. I think there was signs of him maybe slowing down at the start of the season. I'm not too sure if it's maybe him personally doing a wee bit more recovery wise or how he's been managed by David Gray and the kind of medical team there. But he looks as if he's absolutely flying again. And I think if he is on form and playing well, 9 times out of 10 Hibs seem to do well. But I think it's a really, really simple goal from a Hibs perspective. They'll be pleased with that, but I think Hearts will be kicking themselves on that. I thought Craig Gordon could have maybe done a wee bit better as well.
Yeah, it was a tight angle for him as well. I think you probably do favour the goalkeeper more times than not, but I think, again, as you say, it just happened in a flash. Craig Gordon's probably caught off guard too, expecting it to be dealt with before Boyle even gets the shot away.
Recurrence to the keepers, because I thought the keeper was terrible I thought he should have done a lot better with Grant's goal. Is it the boy Smith in goals for Hibs? I thought he could have done a lot better. Initially, I think when the ball actually, before it even ends up at Grant, could have dealt with it in the first place, but I'll just play harsh on the goalkeepers in this game.
Well, my blame for that goal would actually be more talk about Rocky Bashiri and the clearance beforehand.
I think there's a hesitance though. I think when the ball initially comes in over the top, I'm not too sure who it was that goes for the ball with Bashiri, but I think there is a bit of expectancy on the goalkeeper to actually come out and kind of take control in the situation. The ball's kind of bouncing at a favourable height for a guy like Smith to come out and take control of. I know there's that kind of like tired old cliche that you just assume that the goalkeeper should take control of everything in his box, but I think that was the kind of expectancy from the Hibs defenders there for Smith to come out and claim it. The clearance ends up pretty rushed, and in fairness, like Grant connects with it really well, but when you're watching it back, the ball's right down the middle of the goal. Like it's not a good goal for Hibs, but it's the kind of similar fashion. It's not a good goal for Hibs' perspective to concede, but Hearts will be pretty pleased at managing to pounce on a mistake like that.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched, my recollection was, when I caught the highlights, I felt for Rocky Bashiri, he's got to either put it out for a set piece, or if he's going to try and send it down the middle, he's got to send it as far as possible, because it's just obviously at the edge of the box. That's one of the last places you want the ball to drop in that scenario. And I made a note of saying that, Rocky Bashiri, maybe, again, just watching from the highlights, looked a little soft in more than just that instance. He seems to be the hero some weeks. Maybe villain is harsh, but yeah, he seems to be quite hot and cold in the Hibs jersey from what I've seen anyway. And yeah, I think personally from what I've seen in that goal, I felt Bashiri should have done better. Jenna, you got any penny for your thoughts?
As like I watched the game obviously yesterday, rewatched it in the highlights just to kind of refresh myself and everything. And to be honest, she's spot on. He could have done better in situations like that if you're a defender. It's almost have an arrogant way of thinking of just automatically assuming, oh, the goalkeeper will deal with it, it's fine. Because you get situations like this one where the keeper can't, and ultimately, who's going to be the one that gets blamed for it? The keeper actually makes an attempt at saving it, or the defender that doesn't try and shut it down correctly. If you just punted the ball a wee bit harder and maybe kind of focus more, he could have put it out. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could have easily been avoided, but it is what it is. You just kind of take on the chin. I think if you're in that situation, I move on. Hibs obviously ended up moving on, and it worked out fine in the end for them, but the everyday goal like that means after you've just scored, it could have easily went another way.
Aye, I think Grant still has a lot to do. In fairness to him, he's still got to get the ball on target. It does sit favourably for him at the edge of the box, but aye, if you're hitting the ball at that speed, you're going to. If it's hit the ball at that speed, balls on target, yeah, giving the goalkeeper, it's certainly giving him an issue anyway, and he did when the ball flew right past him.
Well, you might be right, Sam. The keeper might have been able to do better on the goal, but at the end of the day, it really didn't matter because Hearts didn't register another shot on target after that goal. So maybe the keeper was in for off day. We'll never know. As we say, Hearts, they just didn't do enough to threaten afterwards, it would seem, or at least in terms of shots on target. But there is more criticism to be thrown when you look at the winning goal, as Jenna touched on earlier. Great advert for Scottish football. That the winning goal, Iredale on the volley, half volley. Craig Gordon almost gets it as well. So I think it shows you just how tremendous of a strike that is, because it's caught right in the side netting before, just beyond the post. And Craig Gordon's again just ever so close to getting a fingertip on it. But again, the criticism for me comes that you've got Lawrence Shankland with the captain's armband of all players. For me, he gives up on it far too easily and just sits back to watch Iredale take it on. And as stated, he also goes on to score.
Aye, I thought he was particularly poor just in the game in general. Shankland, it's kind of in those games he has had big moments. I think there was one where he actually scored the Easter Road the winner in the last minute last year. He's got, in general for Hearts, like I think he's 25 goals in his first season and 30 in his second. It's like ridiculous numbers. Obviously this season he's not hit the heights, but I just don't think there was a performance that could have summed up his season more on Saturday. I just thought he was totally ineffective in the game, and it was really, really, really poor. I think when we were kind of looking at it, we were talking about it in the group chat at the time. I think you can see why if you were a Hearts fan you'd be raging. I think he has copped a fair bit of stick on. They had a wee read on Pine Bovril and then some of the posts in the Hearts forums as well. And I think there seems to be a wee bit of a general consensus that he's not the most popular guy at Tynecastle at the moment. But you can't take it away for the finish. It's superb. I think Craig Gordon could have a step ladder and go gadget arms, and he'd probably still struggle to get there. It was a proper world day, and deserved to win the game. It was a moment that will probably live with the Hibs fans for a long time.
Yeah, Jenna, what about you? Do you think are we being too harsh here? Should Shankland have done better, or are we picking on him a bit too much?
Shankland's a fraud. I'm sorry, but he's not impressed me at all this full season. I've not looked at a Shankland performance and actually thought to myself, "Oh, he's done no bad today, lad." Honestly, I couldn't tell you the last time he actually did anything decent in a Hearts jersey. Now, don't get me wrong. As long as if I watch Hearts regularly, it's usually highlights before coming on here or whatever's happening with Motherwell with Hearts. But he's just a ghost in a jersey at this point.
Yeah, and as Sam said, he's not particularly the most popular man. Out of contract in the summer. It wasn't long ago. Again, he was kind of being linked with a plethora of massive clubs, particularly the Celtic and Rangers in Glasgow. But I think he's more or less said he's not going to be signing on. He will not be staying on. And with the campaign he's had, I can't imagine his stock being as high as it was before. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what is in the pipeline. But I think there'll be a lot of criticism from the Hearts fans that will be saying, well, if he's on the way out and he's got the captain's armband and he's not bursting a gut in what is potentially his last ever Edinburgh derby, to prevent what went on to be the winning goal. Oh, well, it's a good thing I'm not a Hearts fan because I think I'd be using very strong language if that was if that was my captain. I haven't watched that with that exact scenario.
I can see
And
him going to St Johnstone, to be honest. Like a team like St Johnstone, County, maybe likes of Ayr United, depending on if they come up or not. He's just not impressed. I'm sorry. Like he was decent with United. He did good with them as we done United. Sorry, Ethan, but he was fine with them. I think, to be honest, like, he had a good first season with Hearts. Like he did well, but he's just not the same player. I don't know what's changed in him, but he's just not the same player. I mean, we used to be on here fighting for his chance to be included in a Scotland call. Why he'd be a good player to have on the ranks, but I think if he was to get a call up nowadays, I'd be chatting Steve Clark's door myself and like, leave him in Scotland, please do not take him to hand and leave him in Edinburgh.
I think there was obviously chat of him going to Preston in January as well when he got linked to that, which was a wee bit baffling because I think up until that point he'd only scored 2 goals all season, and I don't know how much it kind of hinged on last summer, but I feel like he was fairly convinced that he was going to be going to Rangers. They were going to have pulled the trigger in the summer last year and paid Hearts a few million for him, but I mean he's miles off that now. Like he's got a worse goal return than a lot of strikers in the league that are worth like a lot less money than he was touted at going for last year. So it'll be very, very interesting to see where it ends up. To be honest, I'm still going to be surprised if he ended up at Rangers. But I mean,
Surely they would know better. Surely.
I know, but I think
You'd think.
I think that, but Rangers are pretty pretty mental with some of their decisions that they make in the transfer window, and I honestly wouldn't be shocked to see him rock up there, particularly now that he's going to be available for nothing.
If he's happy being your choice striker sitting on a bench, then fair enough. But I mean, with the way things are going at iBox now, where it's the old staunch pals group, I suppose he might fit in that way.
I think it was near. It was very close to signing a few years ago. I think it was Ian McCall was on the radio a few weeks ago talking when he was at Ayr, saying that they thought that, I think it was when Gerrard was the manager, that they had actually met and thought that they were going to take the punt on him at the time. But I mean that seems like a long time ago now.
Yeah, and I mean, we used to say about how Shankland would sometimes start the season slow, then kick into gear later on. That was certainly the case when he had that absolutely mental season where it was, I think, 30 goals. It was a slow burner, and then round about Christmas time, he was scoring every week for fun. We would say that, when Shankland does show up and he's scoring goals, it tends to correlate with Hearts' team doing well. But now we're actually in a bit of an opposite scenario where the Hearts team are doing well, and Shankland, although while contributing in some areas, again, not the same goals to game ratio, not the same return. But now what's quite interesting on the back of this derby result, Hearts are now currently in the bottom 6. And of course, we'll soon move on later down the line to Motherwell's resurgence under Michael Wimmer. But they seem to have, a bit of that resurgence, back-to-back victories, and now they're ahead of Hearts in the table. But albeit there's only 1 point in it, there's only 4 games left to go until the split. In that run, Hearts will have to play Ross County at home, Celtic away, Dundee United at home, and Motherwell away. So we could actually get a real Grand Slam finish going into the split potentially. I mean, obviously playing Celtic away does them no favours. Dundee United and Motherwell both trying to occupy a spot in the top 6. Yeah, I could see this being another top six race that goes right to the wire, just as it did last season. On the other hand, Motherwell have St Mirren at home, Aberdeen away, Kilmarnock away, and as stated earlier, they'll be hosting the Jambos at home too. So the fixtures read better for Motherwell in comparison. So will this Derby defeat prove to cost Hearts a place in the top six?
I don't know, because I've tried to call this league so many times this season, and when stuff looks like it's so close to happening, I think St Johnstone looked totally dead and buried, even after they beat us. I think they beat us right at the start of January. I thought right at the start of February, I thought they looked totally dead and buried, even though they won that day. But now they're 3 points behind Dundee with plenty of football left to be played. Like, I thought Ross County would have been a definite in the bottom two, purely because of their away form. And away form's been tremendous. I think that's what the most top flight away games they've won in their history in a season. So they're picking up points at home, they're picking up points away from home. Like, they're right in the mix as well. As you said, Ethan, I think it's definitely going to go right down to the wire, because teams are pulling out results that they usually wouldn't pull. Like, we can't win at home against. But I think what we've picked up 2 points from games against Dundee United, Motherwell, Dundee, Kilmarnock, but we've picked up 22 from games against Rangers, Hibs, Hearts and Aberdeen. So, like, none of it makes sense. Absolutely none of it makes sense. It's a pretty wild season, and I could see there'd been a few more kind of freak results that shape up the way for the top six. I think it's interesting you said that obviously Hearts played Motherwell as well in that last game before the split, because we don't home to Ross County, and Ross County's away form's pretty good, and we tend to struggle against teams that sit in and try and defend deep. So I think we'll go right down to the wire, so I'm not even going to try and stick my neck in the line and make a call.
What about you, Jenna? Will this Derby defeat prove to be too much for Hearts to come back from, or can they maybe claw it back? And will it be happen on the final day before the split?
I hope not. But to be honest, we're everyone's we're our own bogey team, to put it bluntly. If a team's struggling, let them come to Fir Park, they're guaranteed 3 points. Happens all the time. So if this does end up being like what looks like the start of the nail getting hammered into Hearts' coffin, they will win at Fir Park. I don't want them to, but there's high likelihood they'll end up winning. So if they can pick up even like a draw, even like 2 draws, that's fine. Come to us, and then I'd fancy our chances. But to be fair, the football we're playing now, I don't know if you have seen the highlights from our past couple of games, but it is night and day compared to under Kettlewell.
Yeah, well, we'll need to maybe do a comparison later on when you say about knocking teams into form, because I think Dundee could probably rival you there. Done a thread on it. I was about to say you're preaching to the choir, literally, the Dens Park choir, and we'll have a thread exactly on that, the amount of times we've knocked out of form teams back into winning ways. Motherwell most recently being one. Ross County had the worst away record in Europe this season before they came to Dens Park. And of course, Aberdeen had that 14-game winless run that we also kindly put an end to them as well. But, I'm sure we'll touch on that later as well. But one more question before we officially move on from the Edinburgh Derby. It simply is Sunshine on Leith the best anthem in football?
Yes.
Yeah. Unanimous?
Not even close, I don't think.
Well, there's going to be no debate, no argument, no discussion here.
The one and only team that keeps the pod is unified.
Yeah. So next in this, again, the same race for third place, another big game. Aberdeen 2, Dundee United 2. United were initially 2-0 up at half-time, and Aberdeen clawed it back in the final 15 minutes of the game. A Kevin Nisbet brace managed to salvage the point for Aberdeen. So a few talking points. First and foremost, it very much looked like a case that Dundee United are a very good set-piece team, and one of Aberdeen's weaknesses just happens to be set pieces. Both United goals, I think the first was from a corner, and I want to say, they're both from corners, but the second one was worked a bit more before, of course, Sam Dalby scores again. He's now leading the goal-scoring charts in the Premiership. He just can't be stopped at the moment. But then, of course, as stated earlier, Nisbet, looking like the Kevin Nisbet of old, 2 very clinical finishes. So what we're making of that then, because I think there's a couple of questions you can ask in regards to both teams. Have Aberdeen maybe screwed the pooch a little bit with this one? Again, given a home game against a team near them in the league, or is the draw actually suit them because it's just enough to keep them above United and only a point off Hibs in third?
I think, to be honest, with the kind of form Aberdeen have been in, they would take a point against a team like United that have been so good lately. What I'll say though, I started watching that game, it was 2-0 up at half time, fell asleep watching it, woke up thinking, that was 2-0. Surely Aberdeen won't have beat them. Let me check Paddy Power, and they've done me at £90. So thanks, Aberdeen. The one time you actually get your stuff together is when it doesn't go for me. So thanks, Aberdeen. Thanks, Kevin Nisbet. Hope you get left at the Scotland squad just because I'm petty like that. But no, overall, though, it was a good game, though. Like, the goals, obviously, set pieces, and that amazing. Dalby, he'll not be at United. They won't be able to keep him. But which is a shame, but he's a fantastic player. There'll be teams biting United's hand off to get a piece of him.
Yeah, he's out of contract in the summer for Wrexham, so I'd be
There's
amazed.
no
to see
way
him
Rex will
back
let
up
him stay at United. No chance. They'll see that and try to pawn him off to someone else for a bit of money.
here.
Well, given that Shanklin was linked with the plethora of clubs and his stock's now damaged, is that maybe an avenue that Dalby can take advantage of? Will maybe the likes of Rangers be looking at Sam Dalby, perhaps?
Potentially, to be fair, like maybe not even like Rangers, but even like likes of like your Hearts or Hibs or even like Aberdeen, depending on how things go. Like you can always move up the way without it being like an obvious jump. If you get what I mean, like going from United and you look at it, if you take like the points, like position from that out of the equation, United freshly promoted club. If you take from that, say like a jump to like you said, like Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, that's actually not a bad move when you think it like that. Especially coming from Wrexham, they're what, League 1, League 2? League 1. That's kind of our fishing pool for players anyways. I know Mull takes advantage of League 1, League 2 players quite a lot. Don't know about you guys, obviously. But it could be a sensible move. Like, it doesn't even need to be a jump straight to the old firm. It could be even a move like that would be beneficial for him.
He's the most stereotypical Jim Goodwin striker I've ever seen. And he actually bucks the trend of strikers that he's signed because he's actually scored goals. And I think that was probably one criticism I had a Goodwin in his time at St Mirren. A lot of the strikers he signed done the kind of same thing. They were big, physical, but they weren't particularly good in front of goal. I think if you look at Dalby's career, this maybe looks like a wee bit of an anomaly. But regardless of whether it looks like an anomaly or not, the quality he's finishing is really good, and that was another really, really good finish at the weekend. I wasn't really shocked at the result being a draw, to be honest. I think for all Dundee United were getting plaudits of how well they had done up until around kind of January, February. They have kind of tailed off a wee bit and they aren't playing particularly well. I think the thing that kind of shocked me the most though was Jim Goodwin's sides are, as much as it's boring to watch, it can be a bit like it's painful. It's like watching paint dry. They're very good at holding leads, and it's something that they've been very good at doing this year. It's holding leads, keeping clean sheets, and I was really, really surprised, particularly the manner they conceded the 2 goals in, because they're usually pretty strong defensively. I do think maybe Gallagher going off injured in the first half kind of maybe knocks a wee bit of that organisation out. He's a real leader for them at the back. He's a massive figure for them at the back. Adebayoyega's pretty good, but he's still kind of a wee bit naive at times, and I think you can see that kind of creep into the defence in general for the 2 goals for me. But again, like Premier Sports seem to have they've picked a decent game, because the one they picked between St Mirren and Hibs a few weeks ago, but they've got football stopped. So 2 good telly picks this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to United, when you talk about that Jim Goodwin team, very good at holding leads. They're a good reputation for kind of dragging the game on and then scoring a lot of late goals. They're quite resilient that way, and also coming back from behind a few occasions, snatching victories at the jaws of a different kind of result. The one that sticks out was when they beat Hibs at Tannadice earlier in the season. I think they scored twice in injury time to win the game.
They've done it twice to us this season. They've scored 2 in the last 15 minutes to win games. So, but it just looked weird, and I think over the last wee bit they haven't really looked like a Jim Goodwin team.
Well, that's what I was about to touch on there, because I've got the stats here, and that was 15 minutes. They had to see out a 2-goal lead, and they've flunked it. Aberdeen draw 2-2. Looking at United's record this year, let's see, they've played 11 games and they've been beaten in 7 of them. They've thrown away leads to Hibs, Rangers, of course Aberdeen, and 2 of which are obviously rivals for the European places. United now next host Dundee in the Derby, as it's cup weekend, and they're knocked out. Back-to-back games on the road to Ross County and Hearts for hosting St Johnstone, with again Motherwell on the ascendancy, it would seem. Hearts currently playing well. The question then does arrive, if United could potentially actually drop out of the top 6. Is the Jim Goodwin side now beginning to have a bit of a change of character? compared to the side that we've seen the first half of the season that was resilient, good at holding leads, etc. Because the stats would suggest that there maybe is a bit of a turning point here, and maybe it has something to do with the likes of Kevin Holt, who was a big player for them, now moving on. You mentioned Declan Gallagher being one when it had to come off, but that Kevin Holt was a very prominent first team figure that's now completely out of the picture.
Jim Goodwin teams are notoriously streaky, and I think again, I can get back to the time. Obviously we had him at St Mirren for a few years. Like Jim Goodwin went on, I think it was 2 11-game winless runs. Like it's not exclusive to just this season that his team's been on a poor run. I think you look at the run when he gets sacked at Aberdeen. like 6-0 away at Hibs, 5-0 at Hearts, beat off at Darvel, lost 3-2 to St Mirren, lost 2 games in a row in the last minute to Celtic and Rangers. Like when Jim Goodwin teams go on a really, really bad run, it's hard to arrest it, and I think a lot of it does come down to the way they play. I think in terms of dropping out the top 6, I think what are they sitting on just now? 40 points or 41 now after the weekend. I think
they're still semi-comfortable. I think it's maybe a 2-game deficit from the nearest team to actually get them out of the top 6.
I think you're talking in the average for the top 6 over the last 3 or 4 years. I think it's been about 40 or 42 at the point of the split. I would be really, really, really surprised if they dropped out. And I think it's just in terms of the kind of cutthroat man at the league. Every team, like everyone around the middle of the table is beating everyone. I would be pretty surprised, but like I said earlier, it's really hard to make a call because so much, like teams like St Mirren and Motherwell who've went to Ibrox and won and picked up points that they wouldn't have been expected to. Like it's things like that are going to probably keep happening. And teams, I think with Celtic being 16 points clear, might see them take the foot off the gas in some of the league games. Teams can maybe take points off of them. We've obviously seen Hibs do it. It will continue to happen right up until the split. But I think for me, I do think they've probably done enough to take one of these spots just now. I think they're realistically probably only one more win away for doing it in the next 4 games.
Well, I hope they do get the top 6 because with Dundee flirting with relegation bother, I don't even want to picture that scenario if they're in the split with us. And of course, I mentioned earlier Kevin Nisbet of old returning, clinical finishing. He's now on 9 goals for the season. Their last 3 league games where Aberdeen have picked up points. He's contributed a decisive goal or assist. He scored the opening goal against Dundee last month, the game where the winless drought came to an end. He set up the winning goal against Kilmarnock in their 1-0 victory, and now he's bagged the brace to ensure that they stay above United to be a point away from third. So another question to raise there, because I think Kevin Nisbet is one that maybe divides the Aberdeen fans. Is he now maybe showing up bang on at the right time?
Aye, especially with what you're saying there, Ethan, if when he's scoring goals or getting an assist, they're contributing to points. So, listen, I've always liked Kevin Nisbet. I really liked him when he was at Hibs. I think kind of for whatever reason it never worked out in Millwall. I think it was a kind of mix of injuries. You did see pictures of him and he maybe wasn't taking the best care of himself, particularly just before he came back up to Aberdeen in the summer. There was the picture of him at the Millwall training camp. They did a wee bit of a Homer Simpson build about him, but I don't think there's any kind of denying his talent. But I think his issue is consistency, and I don't know. I think if Aberdeen are going to have a kind of strong end to the season and replicate, no one, I don't think anyone, Rangers and Celtic probably don't even replicate runs like that, winning 10 games, winning 11 games out of 12 and drawing the other. Like, it was such a kind of freak thing, but in a lot of those games, Nisbet was really, really positive. He was contributing a fair bit. I think he got a couple of late winners as well for them. He's a guy in terms of international I want to see do well, but I think he could have a real big say in the race for third, particularly if he's going to keep popping up with important goals like that. His confidence keeps kind of getting on the rise, because he did, I think, if you go back to that Dunfermline game in the Cup, was it maybe a few weeks ago before he scored? Like, you see the one that he missed, the open goal. Like, I think you kind of seen how much it was frustrating him, because he scored about 5 minutes later, and I think that when he turns around and looks up at the camera, and he's like, "Thank fuck!" Like, he finally hit the back of the net. So, I think he could have a really, really big say. But again, it's, as I said, consistency is his issue, and he's going to need to try and find some over the next 9 games to fire them to third, because they don't have any other goal threat for me.
Well, I had Papa Gay that was missing for a lot of the season. He's back now, but I think they seem to actually favour him in the 10 role. So I think you're right. I think Nisbet's going to have to be the main goal getter, and if he does well enough and Aberdeen get third place, Nisbet scoring goals. That then offers an opportunity for Nisbet to then prolong the stay, because I think it's only a loan spell he's currently there from Millwall, and I think he'll fancy just to have a new move to set him right, because I think he's more or less banished or exiled from Millwall, which has left a lot of people puzzled with the statements Millwall put out. But now, Jenna, you're getting the spotlight here. It's up to you. You can pitch in on United's fortunes. You can pitch in on Kevin Nisbet, or we can jump straight to Ibrox and talk about Motherwell recording a back-to-back victory against Rangers away in Glasgow.
Well, that's a no-brainer. Come on, I've been sitting there waiting for my opportunity to shine here. No, honestly, that result means the world. I'd agreed to do a shift swap at work, started refreshing BBC Sport like almost every 30 seconds as soon as it came up that first goal to Motherwell. I was determined it wasn't going to happen. I was like, we've seen this against Kilmarnock, they were 2-0 up at half time. Not going to get ahead of myself. It's fine. 45 minutes is a long time in football. Well, never mind all the extra time I added on towards the end, right? See the squeal I let out when it came up full time, 2-1. I'm surprised you didn't hear it. Honestly, I can't get over it. Like, I'm just going to drop all the professionalism with this one. That is absolutely fucking some result for the well. Because I've still no came off my high for it. I went out celebrated it because I never got the chance last year when it happened. I had really bad health at the time. But you best believe I celebrated both wins this weekend, and I would do it all again. I've said for so long, I've always fancied our chances against Rangers more than I do Celtic. We're more reliable against Rangers as well. I don't know if you mind the game I'm talking about, but just at the turn of the new year, had them at home. We should have won. VAR destroyed that game, but different conversation for a different day. That was our retribution. That was the result we should have had at Fir Park. I just need us to actually do it at home. You'd think it'd be easier to beat the Old Firm in your actual own stadium, but we've kind of realised now that, no, take us to Ibrox any day of the week. We'll absolutely destroy them. And I hope this gets clipped. But honestly, I'd take Rangers any day of the week now. And results should have
Motherwell simply said to Queen's Park, whatever you can do, I can do better. But what I want to know, Jenna, is can you tell me a bit about the performance at Ibrox? Because when I commentated Motherwell against Dundee, the feeling I got from the Michael Wimmer team in terms of the philosophies trying to cement was there's a very much a high intense press, particularly between their own final third and going forward in the final third to suffocate the defenders and strikers equally.
Oh, it is, and it's so refreshing to watch. It felt sometimes that the players were trapped under Kettlewell. And that's something we said for quite a long time, was in his squad with us, don't get me wrong, some of those players have been at Motherwell for years. If you look to some of the guys, they came in under like either Hamill, Kettlewell when he first came through the ranks, like as in like 23, going into 24, like that kind of summer. He had such good players, but he just didn't seem to kind of know how to make them great players, if that makes sense. Because when you look at the likes of like Andy Halliday, Cam Slattery, the people like that, you kind of know what to expect from them. I would never expected that performance from them though. He's completely transformed what was good players into great players, which sounds probably dead basic, but as genuinely the way I can describe it, because it's night and day. At first when he came in, I was like, oh, it'll probably take until the new season starts to actually put a rock up their backside and to kick them into shape. But it turns out all we needed was 2 weeks, because within 2 weeks, obviously, we bet Dundee and then we've beat Rangers. At this point, I said, bring them on Celtic. I'm convinced in the next season we win it by about 17 points.
Yeah, so it's actually quite refreshing then. If that is the case, like I say, I didn't watch the Rangers Motherwell game, but I like the idea of knowing that a team has went there to Ibrox and actually had a go at them and sticking with this foreign philosophy. Because again, one of the blessings you get when you have managers outside of the kind of the Scottish merry-go-round, it's new, it's fresh ideas. They don't have the kind of same. I'm struggling for the right words, but the off-putting elements about big games like that.
You don't have the mentality that the managers here do.
Yeah, precisely that. I mean, for Dundee fans still talked about to this day about the Benetti era we had with Italian managers at the start of the century. It was very much a case that there was no intention to kind of sit in against the Old Firm and hit them on the counter. It was, no, we're going to try and go toe-to-toe, take them head on. That they'll be the bar that we test ourselves against. And like I said, might be the case here with Motherwell under Vimmer. It feels like it's any case really when a foreign manager comes into the Premiership that they're willing to have a go. As you say, the mentality difference. And I think that's vital because I get the feeling, especially when you listen to other podcasts like Open Goal and that, when you listen to the kind of players that are still playing or former players, there's almost this this self-defeatist attitude that they're admitting that they're beaten before they get there. And of course, how are you going to win games of football if you're going into it thinking that hope we could just keep the score down today, kind of vibe.
There's definitely, it definitely exists. But I remember after we played Celtic just before the split last season, and we get beat 2-0 there, 3-0, sorry, and Rio Hatate scored two worldies. And I remember talking to Dermot DeCaro, who at the time was a St Mirren assistant, after the game, and I get what you're saying with the kind of the mentality thing, that you do have a bit of fear, but I think we did have a go that day. We could beat 3-0, but he said it doesn't really matter what you do. He says if Rio Hatate or Matt O'Reilly decide they want to do something that wins the game, such as the difference in standard in these teams, that these players are instantly capable of going and winning a game on their own. So I kind of do get the mentality part, but I think in general, what you're saying about the attitude of foreign managers, it definitely helps. That guy Wimmer's been in the job 3 weeks or something, Jenna. He won't. I don't think there's any danger that Motherwell are going to be involved in the playoff. I don't think there's there is obviously the chance that they'll finish in the top 6. So he's not really got anything to lose. You can go there and get beat 2-0, and that's fine. It's just kind of par for the course. But to go there and actually have the performance they did, I thought they may be tired a wee bit. It's maybe for the second game in a row, because I watched the Dundee game back as well, and I thought it maybe got to the 60th, 70th minute. They did kind of look to run out of energy. I watched an interview with the guy, the manager, and I think he said that they've started implementing double sessions, but stuff like that you're maybe not going to see the benefit of until next season. So I think probably for the next wee while you will see players maybe begin to tire, but Motherwell do have a particularly big squad. It might not be stacked with the kind of best of quality, but I think if this guy's come in already, made already good players that wee bit, that be kind of 10% better, I wouldn't be surprised to see Motherwell have a really strong end to the season if that's the kind of style that they're going to go for between now and then.
No, I agree, Sam. With us, we're a bit of a weird club. Every season, without a doubt, we will always have the 7-game run without a win. Every season, it always happens around about the same time. It's always between October and February. It's always around about then. We're going a really bad run. Gaffer gets sacked, rinse and repeat, right? It happens. What I will say, though, is our run happened obviously this year, just after Christmas, after the Rangers game, and then the Aberdeen game, we beat them at home. Before that, Kettlewell did have us on a good run of form. The only reason why we're in the top 6, and even if it is by the skin of our teeth, right? The only reason why we're there is because at the time, Aberdeen was beating everyone around about us. So thanks, Aberdeen. But because they were taking points off everyone at the start of the season, it then meant we could slip ahead. So when obviously the results did go back, yeah, we dropped quite a significant amount. I think at one point we were sitting at our 10th or 11th, and it looked really bad. The gap was quite small. And to be fair, it still is. It's not the most comfortable of gaps between 6th, 7th, 8th, and then the bottom 3 places. But we then have now obviously done this. We should have beat Rangers at home. It all just goes to show you that the mentality thing does obviously come into it. When you look at the things the budget, blah, 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 all that nonsense that excuses certain results in Europe, but then we get told to suck up and deal with it, right? You expect that. You expect things like that to come into play. But I said this in my BBC column, and I was talking about the new manager coming in before it was actually announced. I said, the last thing I want is a Jack Ross, a Neil Lennon, folk like that coming in. Because it's just too same old, same old. I don't want anyone that's been involved in Scottish football to come in. And obviously,
Ethan would kill for a Jack Ross or a Neil Lennon at Dundee.
Yeah, if the Lenny plane wants to land in Dundee, fair play. But honestly, I said the worst thing that could have happened to us is that. And even I know Brynny's new to his manager career. Obviously, he's played for ages. I was like, nah. The worst thing that could happen to us
needed the change.
We needed it, to be honest, and it's the best thing that could have happened. I mean, obviously, the Aberdeen, that Thielen boy, he's from overseas. Okay, maybe not as much a good example for how Aberdeen is now, right? But if you look at it from the start, you don't get results like that on a pure whim. You get that through having that mindset of, yeah, they might be a better team than us, and what? You need
Well,
to drop
Jimmy Tahine's Aberdeen did beat Rangers, and they did actually get a result in Parkhead, and they did it by having a go at them. They didn't set off Celtic either.
Aye.
So again, we're kind of on the money here with this idea that the mentality difference is huge. And yeah, I think sometimes you need fresh ideas in order to evolve. It's as simple as that. When you have the kind of same kind of coaches that all have the maybe different outlooks on how they would like their team to play, but the same outlook on the league, the same outlook on other teams, the same coaching courses and everything, then you can't be so surprised that that the differences between these managers are all kind of minimal, and it feels like that quite a lot. But looking onto the actual game itself too, what the thing that I'm still kind of staggered about watching it, and it's annoying. I'm annoyed at myself that this is the main thing that I've caught on. It's just, what is the linesman doing for is it the first Motherwell goal where Jack Butland spills it? I mean, we'll talk about Butland's error in a moment.
Baffling.
But what the fuck?
I don't know what he's flagging for at all. He's so poor though, so poor for Butland. I would say uncharacteristic, but like that, it's really, really, really crept into his game this season. He's made so many errors. I think really high profile too as well. Like, I mean, that one at the weekend was an absolute shocker. I think even against we beat them in Boxing Day, he came out and like he absolutely maims Greg Kiltie for no reason at all. He said I think he's had a few in Europe as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, one at Fir Park as well, where he's punched the ball in his own net. And
I was literally just about to do that.
And got away with it.
Somehow it didn't count.
And got away with it. But there's something's really amiss with Rangers just now. It's
Man United as well, wasn't it?
Aye. It's just crazy how quickly one goal can totally shift the whole feeling at Ibrox. Like even when we went there last week and won, like as soon as the first goal goes in, there's just like the players don't really know what to do. They don't react well to it at all, which I don't know if it's maybe something to do with the pressure for the crowd, if the players just maybe seem as if they're half-arsing it a wee bit. But if teams are going to go there and continue to set up the way that Motherwell and St Mirren have both done in the last 2 weeks, press them high, force mistakes, because they will make mistakes, like particularly when they've got a back line. I think, Tavernier started the centre-back again. They're having to kind of put a makeshift midfield together, two guys in Raskin and Diamondo who don't complement each other particularly well. Like, you're going to force a lot of mistakes from what is a very, very fragile team. And Motherwell played it to a T. Like, just sheer grit, determination. I think they actually played a lot of really, really good football for me as well, particularly in the first half. I think right after Dessler scored in the second half, what they did have to do was then drop deep, defend a wee bit, and they done that really well as well.
We did get lucky with their goal getting ruled off. I won't lie.
That was
a very scary time, but as you said, like, they were able to adapt, and that's something that we wouldn't have been able to do like 6-7 weeks ago. Like, it wouldn't have happened. Like, we would attempt that until it would have been too late. Like, we would have only adapted after that second one would have went in, and then Rangers would have got a third, because by then, say it's the 80th minute, you're knackered from running about trying to press them. You're then having to stick in deep and do everything that you can to basically park the bus. We were on a completely different life form at the weekend, and to be honest, it's one of the best things I've seen. I mean, obviously, you will probably mind it well that I came on here about Andy Halliday and certain goal not getting celebrated, things like that. But see, when you actually look at his performance at Ibrox,
he was
you
brilliant.
would have thought he hated him. Honestly, club legend, but honestly, the way he plays, he's just been reignited. And even at that, because I always say, I get fear when Halliday plays at Ibrox just in case. But honestly, he was phenomenal. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the photo of the manager obviously giving him a big kiss and a cuddle and all at the end of the game, but the man's turned into an animal. I don't know what it is, but he's just a different guy altogether. Like, to be honest, I want him to get the captain's band.
I mean, he's a proper professional, Andy Halliday. He always speaks well. Like the podcast, obviously, that he does is very informal and laid back and relatable. But when he does his genuine kind of punditry work as well, I think he speaks really well. I think he speaks well in press conferences. And when you're on about the goal that he didn't celebrate earlier in the season, which again, nothing wrong with, but I actually quite like it when players don't celebrate against their former clubs. Not for everyone. But he still threw himself completely at that ball to give Motherwell the lead. Like, again, his intention there was, I've got a chance to score, I'm taking it. Like,
irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly.
He did what he could to get Clement sacked.
Andy Hardy gives everything.
That was his early attempt to get rid of Clement. He had a premonition how that season was going to go for Rangers, but no, if it means scoring against him, I'll do what it takes to get this man sacked. But we got there eventually.
He's maybe just trying to get in Barry Ferguson's good book so he can be brought over in the summer, maybe. I don't know.
We'll see what happens. I think it's next season his contract's out with us, so maybe if the Staunch Brigade want to bring him in as a coach, give us enough money, we'll consider it. You're easily bought.
Speaking of that coaching team then, because that's another question I want to ask you guys. As great as it was a result for Motherwell, you then got to look at Rangers, and of course this is only the second game with the coaching team installed. And just to remind everyone, it's a coaching team that consists of Barry Ferguson being the caretaker manager. I'm probably going to pronounce this next name wrong. They brought in a Moroccan coach to work with Philippe Clement, who's still there, still the assistant manager. Issam Chéré.
Bang on.
Issam Chéré. Yeah, I'm sticking it. Might be wrong. I've done it now. I've committed. You then got Neil McCann, Billy Dodds, and Alan McGregor. So the initial reaction, I think, out wide, the general consensus that I've seen across Scottish football social media was, what in the holy fuck? This is just completely staunch.
I mean, the Orange Ranger, even Ford Ranger.
Ford Ranger.
Yeah, Ford
I
Ranger.
stayed it off. I mean, they're cracking motors. My dad's got one of them, but it's no bright orange, luckily.
Well, I would like to get your guys' thoughts on it. What do you think about the coaching appointment? Because I've actually got some thoughts, and I'm even going to attempt to defend what I think is the method in the madness, because I do see how it's perceived from the outside.
I don't.
Other than Griggsy, fair enough, right? Because to keep him at Rangers lately has been shocking me. Liam Kelly, Papa Don wrists, speaks for himself. Just look at his career last 6 months he played for Mull. That's all I'll say about that. Butland, again, punching goals. Come on, do you know what I mean? I'm like, him, fair enough. Barry Ferguson, he failed at all the Logan leagues he was in charge of, and yet thinks he's got a shot at Rangers first team. Like, I get getting club heroes and kind of kick the boys up the arse a wee bit, make them see what the club they play for represent, blah, 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 blah. I get it for, like, a training session. Do you know what I mean? Like a behind-the-scenes kind of, like, training session.
Charity match.
For, like, the last, 3 months of the season or whatever it comes to. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, you just, no. If Muller had done that and brought out, like Lasley, Hamill, Billy Pettigrew, like, do you know, or the last remaining Ansel Babes, I'd turn around and laugh at the club and tell them to get to fuck. Because that is just a shambles what Rangers have done. Like, it's fair enough, come on, like, they got a good result, fair enough, right? But, again, just fuck me, what are they actually doing?
I think maybe, I don't know what Ethan's points are, but I can see why they've done it.
Is there? Because it is a shambles.
Barry Ferguson, I guarantee you Barry Ferguson isn't doing any of the coaching. Barry Ferguson will be there just to stand and he'll be there to pick the team. I'm guessing the guy Sheree comes with a really, really good reputation from what he's done at Morocco when he's been at club level. I think Neil McCann and Billy Dodds have, in Scotland at least, picked up decent coaching reputations. I don't know, I can't confess to know about Alan McGregor's coaching credentials, but I think the guy's got enough experience that I'd imagine he would know how to put on a session for a goalkeeper. I can partly see why they've done it, because I do think Rangers have lost their identity a wee bit over the last few years.
Again, motivational training session. You don't torture your fans for like.
I know, and I think that's
the last 10 games, however many it is of the season.
I think that's probably why they've got guys who do have the coaching reputation of like Sheree and Neil McCann and Billy Dodds, because they've probably seen that Barry Ferguson can kind of be the figurehead of this and like show you. I don't know, it's like what Rangers fans do buy into though, as much as it's like very cringy for us. Like they'll buy into the whole like Rangers man. That's the ethos of the club. He'll lead by example. He'll kick a few arses, and I know, and I do think there is a bit of method to it. Like I don't listen. He's got no chance of getting the job permanently. I don't think any of them are going to be there.
If Rangers do that, then they deserve a repeat of 2012. I'm sorry, but they do.
I don't think any of them are going to be there next year. But I think there is
maybe like in a smaller scale role for goalkeeping. But I don't imagine him being like the main goalkeeper coach. Like maybe like the assistant to the assistant, if you know what I mean. Like he makes the tea for the guy who makes the coffees.
But I
But
think
it's a weird one.
I think there's definitely a case for the last like 10 or 11 games for the players that are going to be there next year. Like, give them that, like, kind of give them a wee bit of a jolt and tell them what's required for next year if you do want to be at Rangers long term. And I think that might be in the thinking. I think there's going to be a massive upheaval at Rangers. I think you're probably going to see Jack Butland get back down south, James Tavernier will leave. So there is going to be a real kind of changing in the guard. And probably, in my opinion, it looks like they're trying to install a wee bit of like a proper Rangers mentality in the players that will be there for next year.
Yeah, effectively like a pre-season for the pre-season almost. The way you say it.
Aye.
You're more or less, I think you're bang on, Sam, because a lot of the things you've said kind of align with the points I had. Although I do think Barry Ferguson does have a job to do. I don't think he's the one that's coaching the team. I don't think he's the one picking the team. You can just go off that based off the credentials he's got in management so far. What I think he is doing, it's on one hand, it's like PR. It's to get the fans back on side because there's been a massive disconnect under the Clement era.
That's even hard. I mean, if you see, like, I hate doing the whole, crowd numbers. You have the more fans, that means you're bigger. I hate that argument. When you see how many empty seats there were about Ibrox. Like,
Yeah.
I'm even talking about when the Subway Loyal leaves at 70 minutes. That's fair enough, right?
It's maybe not so much the idea of getting Ibrox full again. It's maybe just to cut the tensions because the fans are obviously on the players' backs so much, especially with like the horror time they had under Clement. So it's maybe just a way of like, oh look, here's a face that you love. Here's a face that you wouldn't want to crucify. So then maybe they'll take it a bit easier, especially with the fact that they're bound to know that Ferguson doesn't really have any expectation, any pressure. The only thing that they could win is the Europa League, and let's face it, that's not going to happen. That's the only thing they can really play for. Although I think someone on Sports Sound today suggested differently. I think Ian McCall tipped that Ferguson could keep his job if they could do that. Which
I mean, someone's got to have faith in them, I suppose. Somebody needs to be hopeful for them.
But one thing I do think Barry Ferguson will be doing 100% is because he was the captain, because he used to be the leader. More than just, again, appeasing to the fans, I still think he'll be the sort of disciplinary guy. I think he'll be the cult man. He'll be setting the standards that were there when he was a player. I think he definitely has a role in that regard. I don't know how he maybe feels about the stuff in the canteen. I think that's how he ended up leaving, wasn't it? Something with beans and tatties in the canteen under the Glen or something. But I think, he'll certainly be there to kind of lay the standards and try and bring that club culture back into the fold of Rangers. Then elsewhere, Neil McCann, I can speak a bit very highly of Neil McCann. He used to manage Dundee. I've seen what his inner workings are like. And the first full season he had, we were playing the most attractive football we had played at that point for about 15 years. So I think McCann's there to help, again, with the coaching, to help get a style into the team, because, again, there was no identity, no style under Clement. Pardon me. Billy Dodds, I think, more or less will be more one-on-one with the strikers. He was renowned for that across his coaching spells elsewhere. And if you look at everywhere he's been, there's always been a top goal scorer in a Billy Dodds side. In Inverness, there was always Billy Mackay. Be fair, he was pre-established as the key striker there. Ross County, they had Liam Boyce. And I think those guys would come out and say too, they owe a lot to Billy Dodds. And I know Gordon Chisholm was very keen to have Dodds working with Lee Griffiths at Dundee, but I know exactly what Griffiths said about it, and I'm not sure if I should be repeating it here. But yeah, he wasn't particularly keen. But Chisholm had high faith that Dodds was one of the best striking coaches in the country. So I think very much it's this interesting combination where they've gotten a team together for specific roles to, again, not only get the fans on side, but I think it does serve a method with the first team to fix some current issues, but more or less hold them in better stead going forward. I think that Shure, or how you pronounce his name, I think, he'll be the guy more or less picking the team. And Al McGregor, of course, doing the goalkeeping coaching. Simple as that. It's interesting, if nothing else, because I can remember a time thinking where I think when we had Jim McIntyre in charge, I was wanting him sacked. But there wasn't an obvious name to come in and fix everything immediately. The same can be said for Rangers. There's not an obvious contender for the job. They're waiting on the 49ers takeover, I think, to take place first, and then under the new owners, new outlook, then they'll look at the next manager. And I remember saying at the time, under Jim McIntyre, that the way to probably go is to assemble a team more or less like this And one of the criteria that I had when I spoke about this with my family was it's got to be people that give a shit about the football club. So kind of go down the staunch route as well. And the names I was saying at the time, fun enough, went on to be the next managerial team in a sense. I was naming guys like James McPake, naming guys like Gordon Strachan. And that's the approach that Rangers have taken. I think it's interesting that I thought that, how many years ago was that? 5, 6 years ago. And now seeing someone put it into effect. So I've got to say I support to see the idea being used and be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, I think they all definitely serve a purpose. But realistically, is it going to do anything this season? Look, they're not going to win anything, but it could very well, again, set some boundaries, set some stuff in the club culture well enough for a massive summer. Because I think Sam's right. There's going to be a lot of major changes. Um, I think you're probably bang on with Tavernier as well. I'd be surprised if Tavernier was still the Rangers captain next season.
Or if he's still there, full stop.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat as Jenna. I don't think he'll be there.
Yeah. So moving, I don't know if you want to move on, but we will move on into the St Mirren game, Sam. St Mirren 2, Celtic 5. I'll just let you take the floor. You can lead with this one.
Aye, I think I've seen it a few times under like Robbo against Celtic. Like the score lines seem to make the game look a lot worse. I think if you were to look at it and see that we would beat 5-2, you'd assume that we've been like kind of in the game for 5-10 minutes, get a wee flurry, but it's probably really inaccurate how the game went. I thought we were really good. Probably as strong as I've seen us play at home against Celtic for a wee while. I thought we were deservedly level just before half time. Obviously, Ryan Alabi also gives away the penalty. I think we missed a couple of chances. Olisanya kind of gets in behind Carter Vickers and Trusty a couple of times as a one-on-one. And then when we got back level, I think anyone watching it would probably say it was a fair reflection on how the game had went. I don't think Celtic really had to work hard for their goals, which is probably the most frustrating part. But I think the kind of main talking point for me at the weekend that I usually don't get rattled by refereeing decisions, but to not give us the penalty right before Celtic score the fourth goal it's crazy. I just think after that we did look a wee bit rattled because that's what the 87th minute Celtic are winning 3-2. We get denied what I think is a pretty unanimous agreement that it was a Stonewall penalty, arguably a red card because of how high he's went in on Roland Adobu. And then, after that, like, I've seen Celtic fans be like, oh, well, the scoreline would have been 5-3, and like you're kind of then having that argument as if to say, well, that's not how football works, because St Mirren would have potentially scored the penalty, although I don't know how bad our record is for the sport, but the guy who got brought down would have been the one that took it, and he's actually not too bad at them. But the game just totally swings on that, and I think it did kind of drain that wee bit extra. It was because then when you're 4-2 down with 2 minutes to go, it's damage limitation. You're not going to get back in the game against Celtic, so maybe cruel when Yang goes up and scores the fifth. But I think overall pretty pleased with the performance, pretty pleased with the performances over the last however 4 or 5 games, because I actually do think whether we've draw against Hibs, beat Rangers, lost to Hearts and Celtic, like we have actually played a lot better over this last wee spell. We do seem to be looking like the Stephen Robinson team of old. I do think we're probably sitting we're sitting 9th in the league. I mean, if we beat Motherwell in a week's time, like we could be sitting back up in 6th. It's just the way that kind of league goes.
I love the wishful thinking.
I know we've not been great against Motherwell this year, but I think it's been a bit of a mental season for us. 3 players that you sign to be starters in the team end up in trouble with the police. You're having to let them go. We've had players join that just maybe didn't fit the identity, and I do think there's an element of maybe Robinson kind of wanting to come away from what we are, like in what St Mirren are, is we get the ball forward quickly, and I think there is a bit of misconception that we're a wee bit of a hoofball team, but we play the ball long with purpose. We're either playing it to try and put the ball in behind teams that can't deal with all the Sanya's pace, or get the ball up to Mandron, who's a really good footballer, capable of bringing others into play. And I think you did see the kind of best of both worlds of that on Saturday. I thought the midfield were really good. I think the 3 of them seem to be kind of finally forming the partnership that we probably hoped they would have been. Probably hoped it would have been at the start of the season. I think Boyd Munson really tidy football, and I think everyone kind of knows what we get from both O'Hara and Phillips. The defence has looked a lot more settled since Zach Kevin came back in January. So I'm fairly pleased with the performances. Just devastated not to get anything. Not more devastated not to get the chance to get anything, because I just think the penalty decision has totally rattled me. I'm fine with losing to quality. I'm fine with. I think if you look at Maeda's goal, I think it's the fourth goal Maeda scores. Like the touch round Marcus Fraser's, like really, really, it's ridiculous. I think Maeda's on 25 goals for the season. However many games, he's got 9 league games left, and I'd imagine Celtic are going to go all the way and win the Scottish Cup as well now. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on and hits 30. So, see if you're losing games to moments of quality like that, it's just the way it's came about, which really frustrated me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be the exact same. I think it leaves a very sour taste in the mouth, even for the neutral, because you often root on the underdog in games like that. And I think it's just, for me, it's a case that the referee's probably shot it. Doesn't want to be seen as the guy that makes that big decision to cost them points. And it's a shame because Celtic are a good team and they don't kind of need calls like that to go their favour to necessarily win games, because, like I say, they've still scored 5 goals away from home, and that's not particularly surprising. Regardless of who they play, they can do that against anyone. And you're right, boys like Maeda are just a completely different class. I would fancy Celtic to do the treble as well. So it leaves a very bitter taste in the mouth the way it happens. I would completely agree. And it's
I
not
don't
the
blame
first
the
time
referee as much, Ethan. I don't blame the referee as much, and I think I do agree with what Robinson said. Like, I think it is a hard one for the referee probably to call in real time, but
that's what VAR's for, though.
Yeah, and that's my criticism. Like, this is what VAR is for, decisions like this. Like, it's so obvious, it's so blatant. He goes in over the top of the ball, and I think getting a touch in the ball is totally irrelevant. I've seen it compared to like Arne Engels against Bayern Munich. You're looking at Upamecano taking the ball away from Engels' feet, and in the motion of taking the ball away, he's then stood on the top of Engels. When Engels isn't in control of the ball, though, Roland Adobe is in control of the ball. Roland Adobe, if he doesn't get taken down, is then in at the side and can cut the ball back, and we have the chance to score. Either Oseni or Scott in the middle has a chance to get the goal. I think the reason that in my head, I think the reason that they've not wanted to give it is because it would have meant, I think what happened, maybe Celtic run up and score maybe about 50 seconds to a minute after it happened. Obviously the ball doesn't go out of play, so you're still in the same phase of play. Like, I think it's because Celtic run up the park and score, and I think that then makes it, particularly how Rodgers was in the media last week after Maeda's goal at Easter Road was chopped off, and I think the SFA don't really need more pressure for Brendan Rodgers and Peter Lawwell and Michael Nicholson, whereas they can deal with Stephen Robinson and Keith Lasley and Jim Gillespie far easier because we're a smaller club. And I mean, this is Monday. I've not seen anywhere near the same amount of discourse in that penalty.
And you won't, and that's the problem. Yep. Because people will only talk about when it happens to Celtic, because God forbid the multi-million pound club has a little bit of disgruntledness. God forbid a decision goes against them.
Aye.
I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Kettlewell, that's one thing I'll give the boys credit for. Kettlewell did not want the SFA to get away with it. He called it out for what it was, and that's what I was so proud of him for. Like, the amount of match bans he had to serve, yeah, fair enough. I'm not exactly going to turn and make him a martyr, don't get me wrong. But he knew that was the mindset from the SFA. Now, I'm sorry, right? If, as a corporation, you're that spineless to let folk like Peter Lawwell, Brendan Rodgers and that dictate the rules of how a sport is played just because you don't want a couple of negative headlines, to I say, grow a pair. I'm sorry, grow a pair.
I do think it definitely
rules of the game are the game. If it's
highlights issues in our media here though as well. I think the media in Scottish football is so backwards. I mean, it's no secret. Dennis Buckwire always commenting. It's always me. I'll confess that it's always me when the Daily Record's up to their antics. I just comment dog shit journalism because it gets under my skin. It rattles me. Right, you can have that. I'm rattled by the fucking Daily Record and the Sun and all the rest.
Scott Burns.
Scott Burns. But yeah, so it says a lot about the media and the storm it creates. And yeah, I think that's exactly it. They don't want to face more of the pressure, so it's easier to kind of cave in. We had the same decision go against us at home to Rangers. Simon Murray got taken out by Clinton and Ciala, and on the counter-attack, Rangers scored. And I'm thinking in my head, before they've scored, they'll have a look at this. And then as soon as the ball's at the back of the net, I'm thinking, all right,
same situation.
Ethan, not a chance.
It's the same situation.
Was the referee even called to check VAR, Sam, for the penalty call, or did VR just look at it and say, right, nothing to see?
No, there's nothing. And I think one thing that I've kind of, I don't know what the setup like that Tony Docherty has on the bench. You're on commentary. The first thing I now do is look at the reaction of the bench, because the bench have the live stream straight away. Like St Mirren have the assistant Brian Kerr and Jamie Langfield will have like an iPad, so they can view it straight away and see maybe about 20 seconds or something before Celtic score, like Brian Kerr and Stephen Robinson are apoplectic on that touchline up at the fourth official, like screaming, obviously insisting it's a penalty. And even that you would think would maybe trigger for the referee to have the fourth official have the word in the referee's ear and maybe ask. I don't know how it works. And I mean, I know there's a lot of the thing with the transparency, like with the audio. I'd be very interested to see where they show in this audio, because I think they're pretty good at maybe taking out like wee bits or starting the runs a play when they release the audio, and they maybe take a wee bit out and you don't actually kind of hear what's led to the decision. Because I refuse to believe that someone, I think, what is it, you get 2 referees in the VR room, 3, sorry. I refuse to believe that 3 people have looked at that and not thought that was a penalty.
Do you know what I think?
It's wild.
And this is going to sound like a stupid example, but just hear me out to the end of this one, right? See, when it comes to VAR and everything like that, have an independent body out with Scottish football. And I mean,
that's what we asked for.
Just for us. I mean, for like every country that has VAR, have an independent review once a month to look over things, and then see when things like that happen. Find the FAs that get away with it.
Well,
honestly,
when we
our own version of like internal affairs or whatever. Like
that's what we released a statement just after we played St Johnstone the 1st of February. We get denied a Stonewall penalty. Elvis Maloney got tripped. Like Dre Wright takes his legs away from him, and the referee wasn't even called to the monitor to go check it. And I think that was St Mirren's. Our statement was that we wanted to push for an independent panel to do this. Like, we didn't want Scottish referees to do it, or if they were going to do it, they had to be trained, they had to be full time, and that had to be like their sole focus. There had to be a full time approach to it. But obviously, St Mirren aren't going to force any change.
and that's what's so wrong about this whole thing.
The petty nature of Scottish football is that teams aren't going to back each other either.
Yeah.
You know what I think the saddest part is not only one, are you right, but the SFA, they get away with things like that because there is so much in fine. Because Rangers have even called it out before as well. And everyone's like, haha, statement FC at it again, haha. And it's like, yeah, okay, funny jokes. But see, when you actually look at it from a perspective of, like, you take off the bias glasses in terms of if it's your club that's making a statement or it's not your club that's making a statement, right? See, if you actually look at it for what it is, and you actually think to yourself for like more than 5 seconds, hold on, they've actually got a point here.
Yeah.
It would be a complete game changer, but there's too much points going, and it's not one single team I can point the finger at, right? Obviously, Bayside's Old Firm will benefit out of this mess. Goes without saying, right? But that doesn't mean, like, as you said, an incident there in a St Johnstone St Mirren game, that could have changed your game.
No.
Even like games like that are getting impacted by it. It's not even as if like we're sitting here saying, oh, it happens every time we play the Old Firm. Aye, probably does to an extent, right? But even happens in games like that, like, you can't defend that.
No.
I want to say it was around about the time when COVID called off the season. I want to say it was around about that time. Rangers actually did call for an investigation against the SFA.
And I wonder if that actually happened.
Yeah, I can recall thinking to myself, yeah, we probably should look into it all and try and, change things. But again, because it was Rangers saying it, there was a kind of unity just to go against them again, and that was like the tribalism coming through. And I thought, oh, well, no, this is actually probably working against the benefit of Scottish football. I would love the referees all to be independent, to be foreign referees. And I'm very interested in what you've said there, Sam, because I've learned something new. I thought, basing off the headline, St Mirren were simply just wanting VAR scrapped, because that was all that was kind of published. I didn't realise there was more of a call of just actually more or less improve it.
Nah, the statement was a good read as well, and it was pretty ballsy, because everything.
I was so proud of Sam for that, honestly.
Everything since then has went against us even more than it did before, so it's worked out. But I'll be very interested to see whether we release another statement from the weekend, whether they're going to wait.
I hope he's there.
Whether we speak to Willie Collin, but see, at the end of the day, I'd rather we weren't having to do it, and we got the just rewards for how well we played, and we were given the opportunity that we did deserve at the time. But Aye, I think not to go too much away for the game. Just thought the performance was really good. Result bad and short.
Yeah, it's like, as you say, transparency's got to be there, and it's mental to me how they still make mistakes despite the replays. And for me, the technology is fine. It's just now we've got the perfect reason to then hold the right people accountable. And it's quite sad that we're not having enough. I mean, again, fair fucks to St Mirren going for it. I believe Dundee United have as well.
Yeah, they came out just a week after. I think it was maybe a
Yeah.
week after us.
Yeah, the whole thing with the Sam Dalby header against Hibs. So, yeah, I hope it's something that actually does gain traction because I'm in support of the technology and I think we've got to continue to use it. It's just a case of fixing the real issues with it. It's not the process. It's the boys in the room sitting there watching it and somehow coming to conclusion that the referee doesn't need to see it or coming to conclusion that it's fine when anyone at home watching the TV can say, yeah, that's wrong. That's completely off the mark. And I think there was I don't know if any other managers had the same thing, but Tony Docherty said about Dundee that we actually had a couple of apologies from Willie Collum earlier in the season. So it's like it doesn't fix anything. But nice to know that you're sorry afterwards, but come on, get the finger out your arse and
Make a difference, please.
Yeah. No, you're right, because I said that after the final game when the audio was released about that Celtic Rangers decision. Like, seeing a situation like that, especially with a cup final, like, an apology means fuck all. And obviously, I don't have a horse in that race, right? But if you're either side, you have to be thinking to yourself, why the fuck is this a result? And I hate swearing these, but it's the truth. Like, it gets me riled up. This. It just makes you wonder, what's the point of having these boards if nothing gets done? An apology, get the game replayed, or do you know what I mean? Actually have find the ref. I mean, fair enough. Like, some of the stuff that came out after that was wild, right? And it was obvious it was going to get overly publicised because it was a final and the Old Firm, right? But I thought that would have been a wake-up call, to be honest, to get something done.
Yeah, I should have that.
Clearly not, but that's what I know the pod put up a poll about it on Twitter, and I kind of wish there was a third option of this, is keep VAR. VAR is not the enemy. It's the incompetent arsehole running it. And I'll chant that from the rooftops, because I said, get our own version of, like, internal affairs, but instead of it being like Scottish dress, which will have their own unconscious biases, whether they want to admit it or not. Well, I get that. Like, I'll go to press games and I'll have nothing to do with other teams. I'll be sitting there going, I fancy these folk to win the day. And I'll be watching the game looking for that angle. If it turns out different, obviously the peaceful reflect that, don't get me wrong. But you will always unconsciously watch a game going, I want them to win. It's even if I'm in the house watching the English football, it's like Man United, Crystal Palace, whatever. I don't have an English team at all. I don't like the English league, right? So I don't have a team in it. I'll watch it if it's on telly. But in the back of my mind, I might be like, watching them. I don't like Crystal Palace, and I'm sitting there watching and be like, oh, they didn't win. And actually being gutted. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll always have an unconscious bias. So bringing at least folk that can be proven to have that, if you know what I mean. I mean, all this stuff about, wanted to be a Rangers man back in the day, like you say, wanted to play for Rangers. That's what's going to kill it. Because even if you want to give folk like him the benefit of the doubt that, there was a rain, right, fair enough, it's always going to hang over him, saying like when Bobby Mann was a ref.
Yeah, they've got to do better with the profiling of referees. And I mean, Stephen McLean is one where his brother was a footballer, Brian McLean, played for certain clubs, and his father is like a Kilmarnock legend, more or less, with 300 appearances plus for Kilmarnock. And I don't know if you remember, there was a dive that went viral. Jordan Jones dived at Dens Park, penalty was given. That game effectively, well, it did. It was Neil McCann's last game as Dundee manager, so he loses his job through that defeat. Not entirely on that defeat, but that defeat was the nail in the coffin. No chance of turning it around, and it came from McLean buying the dive, and everyone was saying, "Well, hang on a second, why was Stephen McLean allowed to referee Dundee versus Kilmarnock game when his father's a Kilmarnock legend and his brother played for United?" So there's certainly a lot of questions to be asked about referees' backgrounds. That one's a much more obvious given the footballer ties. But I think you're onto something about I never really thought about unconscious bias when watching neutral games, because that's kind of spot on too.
It's like a sign. It's like someone's brought that up about the SFA before, but it's not even like something you can debate. It's like a scientific fact. It's like been proven through thousands of studies by neurologists that your brain does have an unconscious bias towards things, and it definitely plays a part in refereeing decisions.
Well,
I know that I'm bitter about the weekend.
They don't want it to be, obviously. They themselves want that to come into play. But it's undoubtedly gone it. And like the way I look at it, obviously because I've been watching too much Law and Order lately, right? But like that whole thing of like the conflict of interest with that boy's family playing for Kilmarnock, everything like that, right? Can you imagine if you take that in a different context, right? For just an overall professional career, right? Say for example, you're a Polish, right? Again, going with Law and Order this one, right? Right, Sam, you're a Polish, right? Your missus, right, has been kidnapped, right? Being held for ransom. Do you really think Scotland Yard are going to let you be the police that investigates that? Absolutely not. Conflict of interest. If you find the guy, you're going to pop him there and there between the skull, not even let him answer a single question in that interrogation room. It'd be a conflict of interest. And again, probably a bit over the top example here, but it's just to kind of make the point. It's going to happen. Why is it going to happen? Fair enough. But why make it worse? And that's what sometimes it feels like with the SFA, is that they make it worse
Double down.
by, exactly, to quote Lemmy, don't back down, double down.
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that St Mirren are maybe getting decisions against them on the back of making
Top
that.
of the league 2 years in a row, had the decisions against. Or running away with it, don't know.
It's a shame too, because
You'll never sing that.
I really do. Like so Robo, Lasley, Mark O'Hara. I like to see former Motherwell players and Motherwell managers do well. Obviously no when it comes to playing others, right? That's where I say I've got a lot of respect for St Mirren. The stuff that they're trying to achieve, both like this with VAR, as well as just like in the community, the stuff they're trying to do to grow St Mirren overall. Hats off to these. These are doing a lot of stuff a lot of other clubs should be, but they just don't have the balls to do it.
Yeah.
Aye.
That's
As much as I love chatting about, as much as I love talking about how shit the referees are here in VAR, we've still got 2 more games to cover, so we're going to move on. And I can't hold it back much more because it's we're now having to go to Dundee. Dundee 1, St Johnstone 1.
El Sakiko.
El Crapico. I don't know how much you guys got to see of it in terms of highlights. I commented the game. I watched the whole thing. And well, first things first, it was a fair result in the end, I thought. I thought St Johnstone were worth the point. Dundee, for me, an issue that we've been having for quite a while is we really struggle to create. We're a very good side in regards to the goal scoring terms. We're outperforming our expected goals. For most of the season, we'd outscored every team in the league, bar the Old Firm. I don't think we'll have that record anymore. But generally speaking, scoring, we're great. But we're very clinical, because in terms of actually chances created, we don't make an awful lot. So that's what's really interesting. Against Motherwell in particular, 1 shot on target all game, and it was a goal. And that's probably a stat that can be repeated again and again when I'm watching Dundee, is in terms of shots on target, very, very little. Just happen to be pretty clinical. In fact, I think I'll need to double check it with the game in Paisley. But certainly when we played St Mirren at home, start of the season with 3 shots on target, scored the 2. I want to say we won at Paisley, Sam. That was something similar again, only the 3 shots on target.
Cannot remember Balcom having much to do other than the 2 goals. Picked the ball at the net twice.
Yeah. So Dundee very clinical, but still doesn't fix the issue that we don't create enough chances. So I'm very much bothered by that. Andy Fisher had nothing to do all game. Simon Murray scores the header, and then towards the end, he fingertips a Lyle Cameron volley that's more or less down the middle.
To be fair,
and that's it. That's all he's had to do. So I'm finding myself very frustrated because now St Johnstone, well, they've got momentum. That was the opportunity for Dundee to create a gap at home against bottom of the league. You win that game; it's a 6-point gap, and you've more or less, if you can get another 4 or 5 points in the remaining 9 games, you're probably sound. However, now it's a case that they're still within touching distance of Dundee St Johnstone, and they're going to carry this momentum. They're still unbeaten. They're on the back of a great win from the previous week, and in all likelihood, I reckon they're going to beat Livingston and have a cup run to go with it, which again, that could be pivotal for a team's season as well. They're going to carry the momentum further along, whereas Dundee, we've managed to stop the losing rot, but we're still not keeping clean sheets. We're still not creating, and we're winless in the league since the last game against St Johnstone, which at the time when we won that, we're 10 points ahead of them. So I'm left more frustrated than anything. I'm not griping about the result because it was a fair result. I am annoyed though at the way that Dundee set up, because the first half was murder. Second half, it got better, but it kind of felt like a team that was struggling to think of new ideas, which was worrying. On the plus side, Joe Shaughnessy's back from injury. he's proven to be quite make a big impact early on. I thought he was one of Dundee's better players against Motherwell as well midweek. Made a very notable difference. The young Mexican midfielder Cesar Garza for me was our man of the match against St Johnstone. And the difference was he just showed a bit of dig. I think Lyle Cameron showed a fair bit of dig defensively, but output going forward was very, very minimum. Mo Silla got subbed off at half time. Normally our most consistent player, nowhere to be seen. So it's not just even just lacking ideas. It's the fans are demanding just to see a bit more fight, and for a game like that, there should have been an awful lot more fight than there was. Hopefully, again, fingers crossed, there's a reaction at Tynecastle. I can't really see us getting a result there in the Scottish Cup quarter final, but the logic works both ways. That if we can hit Hearts in this one off and have a cup run to go with it, that's massive for our momentum. The same way it would be massive for St Johnstone. But yeah, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts from what you managed to catch of the game?
I thought the manner that the goal was conceded was terrible for a Dundee perspective.
Yeah.
Just how slow Dundee players, particularly I think initially Silla, to react to the ball kind of dropping. And fair play to McKenzie Kurt, I think he does really well to peel away from both McGee and Shaughnessy. But there, for me, lies the problem. Like, he's the main threat in the box. I don't think Sidibe's a particularly strong header of the ball. You know, he's the height of shite. He's 5'2", like. But whereas Kirk is pretty strong in there, he's like 6 foot. He's a big boy. I thought it was pretty poor the way he managed to ghost in between both Shaughnessy and McGee. I think you can see the reaction of Shaughnessy that he's not happy with the two guys behind him. That I think there must have been an understanding that if he was to win the box, it was maybe McGee. I can't remember who it was in the clip that's behind McGee when the goal goes in. But there does seem to be a wee bit of a reaction to that. And Shaughnessy really wasn't happy with how it happened. I just think it's symptomatic. A lot of the goals that I've seen Dundee concede this season, they just look a wee bit out of sorts at the back, particularly, and then just look a wee bit slow to react to stuff. I don't take it away from the goal from the St Johnstone point of view. The ball in from, is it Curtis who hits the ball in? It's a tremendous cross, like proper whips the ball in. A very, very good header. You know, Carson had no chance, but just interesting to see what he kind of thought about. Like, it just looked to me like Dundee reacted so slow to losing the ball in the midfield initially when it went up to Sidibe.
Yeah, we're a shambles defensively. Last season, we were top the charts for throwing away the highest amount of leads. Like in terms of points lost from having the lead and then losing the game or drawing the game, we topped the charts. So the hope was, all right, we're a good side going forward. Now we just need to patch things up at the back. Because in saying that, last season we still had one of the best defensive records we've had in the top flight for quite some time, and that was quite pivotal to getting into the top six. And this season, what kind of felt like was going to be a turning point was we brought back Aaron Donnelly on a permanent transfer, an undisclosed fee from Nottingham Forest, and him slotting into that defensive line, it felt like a night and day difference. And on the back of it, we got positive results against the Old Firm. Albeit we conceded 4 goals across the 2 games, 1-1 draw with Rangers, 3-3 draw with Celtic. There was still a feeling that we're just about there now. Like that, in terms of performance, the clean sheets will come. And I was a big believer in that because I think there's players good enough there to go toe to toe, hold their own. But for whatever reason, you're right. It looks like they're very slow to react half the time. There seems to be a lack of accountability, and I'll even go as far and say leadership. I think we'll maybe see that tide turn a little bit with Joe Shaughnessy coming back, because we've missed him the entire season. He was out since the last game we played before the split last season. So Shaughnessy coming back is massive, and our strongest back line is probably when John McGee's playing as well in the role of right back, and that's just experience. It's correct decision making, not bucking to the pressure. Simple as that. And of course, Clark Robertson was a good addition to our defence as well, but a couple of injuries meant that for the longest time, our most experienced defender was Portales, who again was still coming over from Mexico, albeit he played very well last season, still has that mistake in him. So defensively, it's a patch Dundee haven't been able to fix up yet, and it's frustrating because I feel in terms of personnel, there's enough there. It's not flawless, but there's enough there that it should be doing better. And interestingly too, just going to bring it up here, there's now debate amongst 2 clubs. We'll start with Dundee because we're on about the Dundee club, Dundee's game just now. Kilmarnock are the next one. there's some division amongst the fan bases in regards to the managers. And I think it's relevant to bring up and get your guys' thoughts on that once you hear the arguments for both sides, which I've got in terms for Dundee here as well. So for Dundee, of course, Tony Docherty's came in and he's done a very good job initially. The first season back in the top flight, he's built his own team, top 6 finish. Everyone's happy. Probably overachieved. This season, they're looking for aspirations to get back in the top 6. It's not working out that way, and they're sloping into a relegation fight. So now you've got some division of fans that are in support of Tony Docherty, want him to stay on board. There's others that aren't convinced. So the argument you've got for both sides, starting with those that want him out, they will have the argument that Dundee are currently 8 games without a win, beaten in 7 of them. A run that includes a 6-0 hammering at home to Hearts, a 6-0 hammering away to Celtic, a home defeat to Aberdeen to break the record of 14 games without a win, and beatings to Ross County and Motherwell, who were in touching distance of Dundee in the league table at the time they played, but now they've both got a strong distance ahead of Dundee. You can then talk about, again, throwing away points when they had the lead. This season, Dundee were a goal up at home in the Dundee derby with half an hour to go, and they got beat. 2 goals up to Kilmarnock at home, 12 minutes to go, albeit with 10 men, they got beat. A goal up to bottom the league St Johnstone, again at home, they got beat. Up early to Ross County, I think 3rd minute, Simon Murray scores. Couldn't ask for a better start, yet you guessed it, Dundee got beat. And I mentioned earlier about the whole 10-point thing with St Johnstone in January. That's been reduced. So then the other argument, of course, you have is how close we are towards the end of the season. This stage of the season will be on the January transfer window. You bring in a new manager at this point, and they have to work with what they've got, which isn't ideal. Dundee already did this in the last relegation campaign with Mark McGee. He was manager for 13 games, and he failed to keep them afloat. Yeah, I don't want to be reminded of it either.
Great times.
Then there's the fact that the grass isn't necessarily always greener on the other side. You're not guaranteed the new manager bounce all the time. And Dundee should know that better than anyone, given the fact that when Neil McCann was sacked, we brought in Jim McIntyre. There was no bounce. The first game we got beat 4-0, and I think he won 2 games all season, and we got swiftly relegated. Jockey Scott got sacked when they were top of the first division. The players did not want to play for any other manager. Gordon Chisholm come in, and it was a shit show until the end. James McPake gets sacked. Mark McGee comes in. You know the rest. Then there's the fact that just because we're beyond the January window, there's players that he's just brought in that have just invested in his vision of the club and backed as well financially by the board. When you talk about Amari Samuels coming in for an undisclosed fee, already mentioned Aaron Donnelly, and even in the summer with the likes of Simon Murray. And you think if any manager for Dundee would have credit in the bank, it would be Docherty, given last season's success and given the fact he's trying to build a young team as well. The final argument for it would be that Dundee have had to deal with a highly unusual amount of injuries this season, pretty disproportionate amount, notably Scott Fraser, who was brought in to fill in a goal contribution and experience void in midfield. Well, he's only played 3 games this season. Ziad Larkesh, a key player for Dundee, had a long-term injury alongside the likes of Charlie Riley, Billy Camacho, and mentioned earlier, Joe Shaughnessy. So with the arguments made on both sides, Sam and Jenna, what would your take then be in regards to how Dundee should look going towards the end of the season?
What I'll say, right, is taking out specific managers' names, players' names there, you could have easily described Motherwell. You could have easily described our position until we came in. A lot of the time, managers don't actually get enough time to settle in Scotland. They don't. It takes about 2 years to properly get settled in. I don't feel like a lot of managers get a lot of time. However, you read everything out. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what you've just said? There's no way he can be kept on, I don't think. I say Docherty out.
I think he's still relatively inexperienced. And I think it does show. He's a wee bit tactically naive at times. I think he can. Anytime I seem to watch Dundee, they go through spells where I think, yep, they've got a clear identity. This is what they want to do. Other times I look at them and think, it just looks as if it's been a wee bit flung together. It's a wee bit short term. There's not really any plan for the future. But I don't know. I think I'd probably side with keeping him. But again, it's all dependent on. I think if Dundee were to go down, I don't think you can really. I think if any manager gets any team relegated for a position of strength that they were in last season, I think you can't really make the case that they keep their job. But I think continuity is huge, and particularly in Scottish football, you've seen the sides who've had sustained success, relatively success, like St Mirren, could have easily been Stephen Robinson when he first came in. He lost 8 in the bounce. When he first came in, we kept him. We've done really well, qualified for Europe last year. We'll hopefully get 3 successive top 6 finishes. I just think continuity is really important, and I think the kind of main one that swung it for me there has been really backed. I think for the first time in a wee while, I think Dundee really got behind, the manager, really bought into the vision of what he's trying to do. I think Docherty's learned enough over the years in football, while being relatively inexperienced in a managing sense. I'd like to think he's maybe learned enough and would approach it differently next year. And also, I never really like seeing anybody lose their job, to be honest. So, I would keep him. I think the good for me from an outsider far outweighs the bad. And I think, if they were to sack him, they'd maybe set themselves back a couple of years, because a lot of these players have signed to play for Docherty, and there's still a chunk of the squad signed up for next year as well. So these are all guys who maybe came in and wanted to play for Docherty and might not want to play for another one. Just kind of similar to what you said about Jockey Scott, Ethan. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's a difficult situation to be in, and one that I certainly don't. I certainly don't miss having a manager under pressure, because I think in terms of us at St Mirren, we're really lucky to have Stephen Robinson. I think Stephen Robinson could punch a child in the face on the pitch, and I don't think he'd be under any pressure at St Mirren. So,
to be fair, I wouldn't say that with St Mirren's track record of behaviour this season.
Well, aye, good shout actually.
But to play devil's advocate with what you were saying there, Sam, about players coming in, it's probably bought into the Docherty kind of effect. You could easily say that about players that Kettlewell just signed in that loan window.
No, I know.
And now look where we're going with things. Do you know what I mean? We signed players at the start of this season that have barely kicked a ball for us, through injury, or they've just got phased out and just never got a proper chance.
Aye.
Amar comes in, gives them a chance off the bat, and they play excellently. So although you can come in under one manager, doesn't mean they're the only reason why you're there. I mean, again, with the different examples of this in real life, just for different perspective on it, is when I started my old job, I had 2 managers, great people. Within me being there for 6 weeks, manager 1 left. Did I then jump ship or down to, I don't want to be here anymore? What, the guy interviewed me's left? No. I stuck it for 2 years and I was happy.
I did down tools when my manager left a few years ago, so.
See, that's just projection then, mate.
I've named some previous examples, and generally I'm normally against sacking managers after the January window, and I saw how that happened with James McPake, because he had just brought in Zach Rudden, Dally Campbell on loan from Cardiff, I think it was, a couple of other players. Niall McGinn was another, and he was quite a high earner too. So I thought, right, you have to back him until the summer at least. If the club get relegated under McPake, then he goes. Then it's fair enough. But you've got to let him see until the end of the season. And bizarrely, of all timings to do it, it was on the back of a win at Tynecastle. We'd just beaten Hearts at Tynecastle. I think we're 10th in the league. Maybe we might have not even been second bottom. And we had just beaten Peterhead to go into the quarter-final of the Scottish Cup. And then that was the point they chose to make the call. And I wasn't particularly happy about the announcement of Mark McGee. I didn't believe it. I thought it was one of those fake Daily Record page headlines. And then, just completely flabbergasted at that whole saga at the time. In hindsight, I understand it a lot more, and I can see that with Mark McGee, at the very most, Dundee were actually, if anything, a bit more tougher to beat. He was kind of gaining more points on average, but the issue was he wasn't winning. It was all coming in the forms of draws. But I just remember thinking, you've just brought in guys like Niall McGinn and Zach Rudden to play for this manager and invest in his vision. Zach Rudden signed a 3.5-year deal, I think it was. Niall McGinn had literally played maybe 3 games, and that he was going to be quite a decisive player for us, trying to get back to full fitness. And suddenly the manager's gone. I couldn't believe that was the run of events. And I really like Tony Docherty, and I hope that he turns it around, because the mental thing is, if he wins at Tynecastle on Friday, and if he wins the game after that, that's 2 20-year hoodoos down the drain, and suddenly everyone's on cloud 9. Football's a very fickle game; it can change very quickly. We've not been to Hampden in a semi-final stage since 2006. We got absolutely pumped off Gretna. The chance to return there alone would be kind of enough to salvage the season, assuming we don't get relegated. And of course, winning at Tannadice as well, that's something we've not done since 2005. So again, I'm a Dundee fan. I support Dundee. I want Dundee to have the best outcome scenario. So regardless of what I think, I'm still supporting Dundee to win on Friday and to win the game after that. And I hope that's the case. I honestly hope he can turn it around. I think I can be honest enough to say I have doubts in some areas, but again, you've got to back them until the hilt. And very interestingly, I think there are some names popping up. I'm not going to be one to comment on that. But again, I'm glad that I got your perspectives because we've got a nice answer on each end. And it sets us up really well going to the next talking point, which is Ross County 1, Kilmarnock 0. And the same questions are being asked now for Derek McInnes. Maybe not as divided as Dundee, but I have seen enough to say it with a chest. So first things first, it wasn't long ago Derek McInnes' Kilmarnock was being compared to the Steve Clarke Kilmarnock. They're arguing which side was better, and these are the best Killie teams I think in my lifetime that I can remember. And of course, Killie performed quite admirably in Europe this season as well. I think they maybe even did better against Copenhagen than Man United did. Tactically, there's been some question marks. I've got the stat here that they acquired a goal scorer in Bruce Anderson, but they've not been able to accommodate him into the team. 31% of his 22 league appearances have come in the starting 11, yet he's played a hand in 24% of their goals this season in the league. They've currently lost 3 in a row, and they're only 3 points above Dundee. Their next run of games includes hosting a high-flying Hibs, Celtic, and Motherwell, again mentioned earlier, possibly on a resurgence, and an away trip to St Mirren, which no one looks forward to, I can promise.
They always beat us. We've not.
Because it's Derek McInnes.
We're three wins in 39 against McInnes' side, so that's a surefire win for them that day.
But mathematically, they could still very well be dragged into the relegation fight, can they? Assuming Dundee get their act together.
Aye, I think they look. I think they kind of look like a side at the end of their cycle. I think McInnes does seem to have he done it up at Aberdeen, like when it looked as if he was maybe going to tail off. Performs well, gets a very lucrative, expensive extension, which I think if Kilmarnock were going to sack McInnes, I think he's still got 2 years left in his deal. That's going to cost them an absolute fortune because I'm presuming that Billy Bibby has put a fair whack of money into Kilmarnock to keep him there after how well he done, got them into Europe. But they do look to me like a team who are maybe at the end of a cycle, and I think in kind of similar terms to talking about like a big upheaval at Rangers, I think the same thing will probably happen at Kilmarnock, and I think you will see a lot of guys that are out of contract, like Vassell seems to be. I think there seems to be a bit of consensus that I think Marley Watkins still has a year left, but he might be looking to move back down south. You've got Danny Armstrong, who's out of contract as well. I think then you look at guys who might want to move on. I don't think they're going to keep hold of Bobby Wells. I think he looks as if he's maybe beginning to outgrow. So I think this kind of coupled with like they're kind of poor on a form just now, it doesn't really bode well. Like a lot of these players might not be here and might think, well, I'm not really going to be here. It's not really my problem. I think that attitude might actually see them end up in a wee bit of bother. I think in terms of actual results and performances, they've just been so poor. I think one thing that it's just not like them is the manner that they've conceded goals in the last few games. I think you look at the 4 goals they conceded against Rangers. If you'd have told me that a Derek McInnes team would have chucked a 2-goal lead against any team, and particularly his Kilmarnock side, wouldn't have believed it at all. They chucked 4 goals away to Rangers without really putting them under any kind of pressure, and then losing to Ross County. I know we kind of talked up like their run of form, they've really turned it around earlier, but it's still a poor result for a Killie perspective. Like it's a game that I would usually assume they would draw, or at least they would at the very least draw or maybe win. But there just seems to be something amiss. Whether it's like they're really missing the presence of Finlay at the back, or maybe something not quite clicking up front. I think Kennedy. I can't remember if Kennedy's actually still been out, but you've lost a lot of output for guys like Danny Armstrong and David Watson compared to last year. So. It's definitely been difficult. It's a weird run, but I do actually think that McInnes might actually beat the end of his terror there.
What about you, Jenna? Do you think it's coming towards the end of an era for Derek McInnes, or is it still plenty of time for him to turn it around?
To be honest, I don't actually think it was as bad at Kilmarnock until you started reading out those stats there. So I didn't think it was as bad. Not going to lie. when we first kind of just talked about it before you started reading out the point, my gut instinct was McInnes to stay. But at the same time, after seeing obviously what happened to Aberdeen with him, that you do get to a point where there's only so much you can do with your players. You do sometimes just hit a brick wall and there's no easy way to resolve it. And sometimes you have to walk. To be honest, with McInnes, I'd hate to see him get sacked. I would give him till the end of the season and then either let him make the amicable decision to walk depending on how the season goes. But I don't see Kilmarnock sacking him.
No, I'm going to
He's
say
got to have
no.
the credit in the bank, surely.
Or he's got to, surely. It's one of those ones where, like, I feel bad for the guy because he has done exceptionally well at Killie, like you were saying there, like European football, the players that he's brought in as well. He's done everything right. It's just a case. I think he has just hit that brick wall.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the case that I think there's been some finger pointing of decisions he makes tactically. I also put out the thing about Bruce Anderson. That's the main thing I look at, and I'm amazed at. I understand obviously how vital Vassell is. I've seen it firsthand how vital Vassell is to that team. Bobby Wills, as Sam mentioned, kind of bursting onto the scene. It's a difficult job, difficult position to be in. But I can also recall them being 2-0 up at Dens Park earlier in the season, and it was the reverse story. So we went 2-0 up against them in the first meeting, and they beat us 3-2. Then they went 2-0 up, and they completely kind of shut shop. They made defensive changes. I can't remember how long there was left to go in the game, but it was like way, way, way too early to be thinking about going on the back foot and inviting all the pressure on. And as I always tend to say, when teams willingly sacrifice the front foot, they deserve everything they get that's coming to them.
Agreed.
Because what you're having to do then by going on the back foot and absorbing the pressure, you're having to rely that everything's going to go your way. Because all it takes really for the ball to hit the back of the net, if you've got every man behind the ball, it may just nick a deflection and they can get the rebound. It may just they win the corner and they score from the corner. You can only hold it for so long until something eventually kind of gives in. And a very fitting example of that is probably when Derek McInnes and Tony Docherty were both at Kilmarnock together and they won the championship. Arbroath initially took the lead at Rugby Park. Killie were really struggling to kind of find a foothold back in the game. And albeit Arbroath, the budgets would be entirely different. They were a part-time team. They then made the conscious decision to kind of tuck in, shut shop, try and last out. I think they were 12 minutes away from promotion. And in the last 15 minutes, attempting to shut shop, to concede the 2 goals that then effectively cost the title. And I just remember thinking, again, there's only so much you can ask them to do, but that sums up that way of thinking for me. And it's we touched about it earlier with the mentality of playing the Old Firm teams and how I'm obviously a supporter of Vimmer and Thielen thinking about having a go. You need everything to kind of go your way. You need to hope that your opposition are going to be wasteful. You need to hope that your goalkeeper is going to have a good game. You need to hope that a lot of things go in your way, that when you're on the back foot, they're not going to take advantage. So there was very much an element of that when Kilmarnock came to Dens. They went 2-0 up and they lost all the points that they could have had. Dundee scored I think it was the 94th minute from Larkesh to win the game. So I don't know how many times that's happened to Kelly this season, but that's certainly a memory that to me sticks out, where you can sit there and say, well, yeah, do you know what, McInnes was at fault and he probably should have known a lot better for an experienced manager. But a manager that we probably should be talking about a lot more, that deserves a lot more praise, is in fact the one at Ross County, Don Cowie. I think he's went completely under the radar with how great of a job he's done this season, especially when you consider right now Ross County are comfortably mid-table. They were in the playoffs last season, so they finished second bottom. They lost their captain in Jack Baldwin, very good player. He used to captain at Sunderland as well, of course, back in the day. They lost their top goal scorer in Simon Murray and the star player in Jan Danda, who practically kept them up last season. Big players to replace, and they've done that successfully with Ronan Hale, with Noah Chilvers, and they've proved to be great signings to fill that void. But then there's the case of the goalkeeper Jordan Amicia, who signed in December. Now this is he's made such a massive impact. This is crazy. I did not realise he actually failed a trial at Partick Thistle in the summer.
Yeah.
So Championship side Partick Thistle didn't think he was up to scratch. Don Cowie's taken a chance on this boy, and the points I think he's mustered them alone is enough to stay comfortably away from the relegation fight. He has been sensational for them so far. So Cowie's given him the chance, and Ross County could have benefited any more from that decision. So Yeah, I mean, what more can you say? That was a big game for Ross County. That, so was the one against Dundee the previous week, where they
Aye.
beat Dundee, came back from behind to beat Dundee 3-1. Now they've beaten Kilmarnock, and now that looks like they'll be in again. Lots of football to be played, I know, but you'd favour them to kind of not go too high, but not go too low. A nice, comfortable finish away from the dogfight.
Aye, the team are. I think Ross County are kind of very similar to what Don Cowie was like as a player. Like very, very hard working. Like Don Cowie had a really good career. Done very well. Played in the Premier League for Cardiff, like Scotland caps, etc. But like very like dogged, very hard working. And I think they actually probably don't get the credit for the football they play as well. I think a couple of the guys that you've mentioned there, I think their midfield have worked really well. I think obviously Randall for the majority of his career has played as a right back. Now he's getting deployed as a centre midfielder, and seems to have really, really benefited them as a whole. It's really helped guys like Nisbet and Chilvers make more of an influence on the rest of the team. And I really like Ronan Hale up front as well. I think he's a guy that I'd imagine a few teams in the top flight, probably the three other clubs are probably looking at a kind of guy like that to come in and score goals for us. But I thought he seemed to be flying under the radar. And I think, to be honest, though, that's probably the way they want it. There's no expectation on them, particularly after last year. They were obviously very close to, well, not in the end, they were in relative terms of being in a playoff, close to going down. So, like, for them to still be in the reckoning for top six and at the moment seemingly steering away, like kind of steering away from any danger of the playoffs or relegation. I think if Brendan Rodgers doesn't win a treble, I think it's somebody like that probably should be considered for manager of the year, particularly if they do sneak into the top six.
Yeah, I don't know how far they are actually from the top six. I didn't memorise the deficit.
Motherwell are 3 points ahead of us, and Ross County are a point ahead of us at Mum, so 2 points. That's quite naff there.
It could be on. It could be on with this run they're on. Like I said, I'm very impressed with him. When Cowie took the job initially last season, my initial instinct was that the improvement, forget about results, the improvement in the style of play was night and day. Ross County actually looked to have a go and attack at teams. I think before, when it was it no, it wasn't Malky Mackay, it would have been Derek Adams.
Yeah.
They had Jordan White, Simon Murray, Eamon Brophy. And what Cowie did that was different was he wanted to play all of them at the same time. He wanted to have all the best players in the park together and find a way to make it work and keep things direct. Murray on the left, Jordan White would play in the middle, Brophy on the other wing. And if you had to change it up, you could just have Murray and Brophy complement each other, and then your White's your target man off the bench to try and get something from those late set pieces, putting the pressure on. And obviously they got some massive results. I think when they actually beat Rangers, which was effectively the game that that swung the title race in Celtic's favour. I want to say that was Ross County's first ever win against Rangers, or maybe it was the first ever league win. But definitely,
yeah, first ever win. Aye.
First ever win, and that comes through exactly that change from Don Cowie. So they're onto something good, and of course he seems to have a good eye for a player, given the fact he lost so much in the form of those players I listed earlier. And again, I'm amazed at the whole story with Amisa. I knew he'd obviously come in and looked brilliant. I just didn't realise that he'd actually been knocked back by a team in the division below. I was flabbergasted by that. But so yeah, big up Don Cowie. I mean, I remember thinking, looking at stages in the season when I thought Dundee were doing well, that Ross County were more or less running with the same points tally. So I thought they're kind of going maybe under the radar a bit here. And now, of course, some massive victories, and as you say, not far away from the top six. Could they do it? Maybe.
They've got as much chance as everybody else that's in the mix, don't they?
Precisely. Well, what about you, Jenna? See, when I know you said earlier about wanting something different from the Scottish football merry-go-round for a manager, because I'm normally of the same opinion when Dundee go through that spell too.
Hit me with it.
But I remember seeing Don Cowie's name linked with the Motherwell job as well. And would that have been one that maybe you thought you wouldn't be entirely against?
I wouldn't have been against it if we were still like sitting round about like that 10th, 11th mark we were kind of flirting with a little bit. I wouldn't have been against it because he knows how to pull off a relegation battle. But I suppose that's more so the benefit of hindsight now. I knew our players still had it in us to push for top six. I just didn't think he had it in him for that type of fight. But in terms of as a survival fight, see if he was like into him, like what Rangers have done. If we were giving it to him to the end of the season, then absolutely I would have been fine with it, but not long term if I'm being honest.
Yeah, there's not enough of a sample size for it yet, I don't think, but initial signs are very good from him.
Still a young manager as well. I think he's only 42 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as usual, whenever I'm on hosting duties, I feel like I do an all right job getting the intro done. I feel like I do pretty well in your making some bullet points, some stats across. The one thing I always forget to do is how to do an outro and actually sign off. So once again, I'm just spitting out my arse and making this up. So unless you guys got any further input for anything you'd like to get across, I think we're good to sign out.
Just got a
Ready for my
simple
bed, mate.
phrase for everyone. Thanks for watching. What the point? Up the wheel.
Yeah, right. No, yeah. Thank you for everyone tuning in. I'd like to thank Jenna and Sam for their time on the podcast, and yeah, we'll obviously just catch us next time here at Salmon's Pizzeria.